Good morning, MIDABI. It's so nice to see you on this Monday. How are you?
Oh, that's such a loaded question. Really? Gonna start off with that?
I like to
No,
keep it simple, get really philosophically crazy from the go.
it is simple. There's so many, the simplicity is simplicity and complexity are the same thing, really. Yeah, I'm wonderful. I'm wonderful.
Maybe better question. How is your iced coffee that I saw a minute ago?
Pretty good.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's
Is
pretty
that
good.
your preferred morning beverage? Like, do you have a rhythm to the start of your day that's pretty consistent, or is it always different?
I'd say, there's some influence of what happened the night before, but I only recently, like last couple of years, started using coffee as a means, as like a friend to kind of start your day with.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but it's usually like one cup of coffee, iced coffee in the morning or something like that. Yeah,
Yeah, I think
yeah, it's good. It's something I know. I like to get outside, take a little walk, breathe, get your coffee, kind of, that's nice. Yeah.
yes. I feel like I've heard a lot of people lately talk about the poeticism of like the first sip of the coffee, but I think
Mm.
the walk to get the coffee might be the moment. Like I love that you mentioned the getting outside to procure the caffeine being a special part of the day.
Yeah, the aesthetics or kind of like the ambiance, the ambiance would be the right word. Of my experience consuming is usually more influence has a greater influence on me than actually what I'm consuming, I think.
I think
So
so too. I
yeah.
totally get that. Oh my gosh. So where are you consuming? Are you in New York City today?
Yeah. I'm in New York City, in my aunt Vicky's apartment. She's been here for 53 years. She's my aunt and also a dear friend. And yeah, and I get to enjoy the city. And when she lives in a part of the city where it's kind of like it's almost like a little bubble in the middle of Manhattan. It's kind of like living in a little park. So there's actually like a cafe steps from the door. I can just kind of go and get a coffee, take a
Oh,
little walk around the fountain. It's nice.
that sounds wonderful. I love live for those moments, and I'm excited to be back in your neck of the woods to do something similar if I can.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy that you're here today and joining remotely while I'm in Arkansas for the time being. This is MIDABI, an artist with a focus on public art, and I'm so excited to understand a little bit more about what that means for you specifically today. So thank you so much
Me
for
too.
being here, MIDABI. What I like to do is kind of follow a chronology a little, starting with your personal background. What were you like as a kid? Where were you? When did this origins of this art interest kind of come to be?
It's a good question. I was born and raised in New York. I kind of come from a slightly, kind of rarefied, unusual beginning, I suppose. I was born at home in Soho in Lower Manhattan. Um, had a midwife who was a friend of the family, and my mom gave birth at home in our apartment, just off Prince Street in Soho. And the beginnings, yeah. So that's where I physically began, right?
Yeah.
I was like a couple blocks from my grandparents, a block from godparents. Um, but I suppose, kind of intellectually, spiritually, I began because, within a family that was pretty, kind of progressive and forward thinking, especially for the times. They'd fit a lot more with what's happening today than back then. So, yeah, my parents came together. They weren't. I always describe my family, and people think that they were hippies, but they really weren't hippies. They were just like kind of. Um, they were kind of modern philosophical spiritualists or something like this. They weren't really flower child, but they appreciated flowers in a sense.
Yeah.
So they both had a 15-year-old guru from India who they were studying meditation from, and that's how they met each other. And then had me, and I kind of grew up in this world of kind of complete, very, very socially liberal, be it race, sexuality, what have you, very open, and then a lot of intellectual, kind of philosophical curiosity about the world, about meaning, about religion was not, there was no adherence to a methodology. There was, everyone was kind of working toward finding knowledge or finding their truth. It wasn't that, okay, we found it, here it is, now consume it. So I was just, to me, it was a natural, my religion in a sense was to naturally be pointed in the direction of, you could say, the divine, without knowing exactly what that is. And that discovery, self-discovery, personal discovery, was really the practice. And I think that was a really very valuable thing that my family was practicing for themselves, but that they also gave me through being part of that family. So and it continues to this day. It's still the same thing. We're all doing the same thing.
I think that's such a beautiful way to grow up. It sounds like you were encouraged not to take things for granted, but to keep learning who you were and the world and your appreciation for it. And I think that line's going to stick with me of they weren't flower children, but they appreciated flowers. Like, that's just awesome. So I'm curious though, at like 8 years old, like, how are you embodying this mindset, right? Like, are you going up to the kids at school and talking philosophy, or what was that like for you as a kid?
Yeah, I wouldn't say it started as early as 8. I definitely felt a little bit of differentiation, and I felt a lot of empathy as a kid for a long time. As in a young adult, I was very, very empathic to others. It was kind of like the major component of my daily view. It was really probably into my early teens when I started to, for lack of a better term, proselytize, right? And kind of like utilize what I felt I understood and was learning as a means of, as a main component of my communication and appreciation of others. So yeah, I would often counsel, because I had a lot of friends who had really unfortunate circumstances in their families, and I was like kind of a bit an anomaly. At least I thought it was, so I would often counsel. I would often, and it was kind of like, at that point, I was kind of repeating in many ways what I had learned. So, well, but yeah, I mean, I was like the little preacher. People thought I was going to start a cult when I was a kid. I yeah, I definitely had this idea that I was kind of like coming from a place that was different and that was special, and that I had something, special to give, and that I could help promote, kind of peace in the world and help people see within themselves and within each other in a way that would, bring peace and consciousness. So, and that was not something that I necessarily came up with on my own. That was like the example that was around that I just kind of owned in a sense. And I wanted to, yeah. So.
Yeah, I love that. I think even, if you have that positive example of your family marching to what they believe and embracing like deeper meaning, as a kid, like when the people around you are in a different world or like vein of consciousness, it could be hard to be yourself and follow your parents' cool example. So I think that was really brave nonetheless. And it's really good that you ended up doing that. At the same time, you were coming into your artistry, right? You began painting in your teens. Like, tell me how those worlds kind of coincide.
Um, yeah. I guess I didn't realize it at the time, but I'm going to suspect that having some artists in my family made me see myself, have the expression of art be normalized in a sense, right? It wasn't family members that I was directly in touch with because they were like a generation removed, but my mother's grandmother, my father's mother, who passed away before I was born, they were artists professionally. So I don't remember exactly why or how. I just started. I was in my early teens. I started taking tablecloths. They had like the fuzzy underside of tablecloths, and I was painting those. And it was like the texture and the colors. And started painting furniture, like, from thrift stores and things like that. And my family appreciated it. We got our first computer. I started making digital art. I think maybe it's probably when I actually started making digital art that I saw myself as a professional in a sense. I didn't have the confidence to do something with it at the time, and I didn't, as much as my family, loved me and appreciated me, they didn't ever really kind of like encouraged me or pushed me or like helped me attach myself to anything. Like, it was just kind of like, okay, do what you want to do, essentially. So I was looking at my art that I was making, and I was like, damn, this, I really liked it. And I was like, yeah, I mean, I think it should be something, but I don't think anyone, no one's going to take me seriously. No one's going to, no, I'm just a kid. So I never really took it seriously in that form at that time. But I continued to, to produce work casually. And it just followed me. It followed me throughout my life. And it was just a continual, it just never felt foreign or removed. It just was a natural kind of thing that I would do sometimes. And that just grew and became more and more important over time.
Yeah, that's awesome. Those origins and just kind of doing what was around the furniture, the backs of the tablecloths. I've never heard that one before, but I can appreciate that texture as you describe it being a
Is it
really
getting loud in the background over here?
so far it's okay. I think I can
Okay,
still hear
okay. There's
you
a
good. Yeah,
garbage
no,
truck
thank
outside.
you.
I can close the window or something.
You never know what to expect when you're in in the city.
Expect the unexpected, they say. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. No, for now we're golden. So you had this immersion of like starting to paint and dabble with digital art. On your website, you started mentioning too how you began accessing altered states. And I think it's really interesting how you interweave what's going on with the psyche maybe, or the spiritual side of you and the art. And if you're interested in like talking a little bit about what that, I'm not really familiar with it at all. So I'd love to understand how that kind of fits into your artistry, or how you.
Yeah, well, it's significant. Right. So in October of 1993, I tried marijuana for the first time. Didn't really do much for me, but I was hanging out with a bunch of like my crew of friends. We're all, they were all, intelligent, emotional, kind of, creatives. We were all kind of like this little ragtag, like leftovers, from the rest of the groups that really had strong kind of cultural group identity, and we were all kind of didn't fit in that way, right? And so I had a friend who had an older sister, and she introduced him to smoking, to marijuana, LSD, and then he kind of passed that on to the rest of the group, right? So I had the opportunity to make a decision, make a choice if I was going to, kind of walk away from that, or if I was going to experiment and see, and be open to new experiences in that way. And I decided, that it was, is better to allow myself, allow something new, even though it was risky maybe, or unplanned in a sense. So so Connecticut Beach in Long Beach, New York, was our spot. And one night we went out there, and we were with a group of people, and Josh started handing out LSD, and I took a tab of LSD, and then I grabbed the radio that was playing Jimi Hendrix, and I walked off to a lifeguard chair. And I sat on the lifeguard chair by myself listening to Jimi Hendrix, through the night, and till the sun came up. And I was just having this kind of incredible visual experience. And the next morning, we were hanging out in a bus stop. I think they call them like latchkey kids. We were, it was kind of like that experience a little bit. And I realized that I was not afraid to dance anymore. And I had been terrified to dance. school dances, a party or whatever, I just could never get past that feeling of fear of being seen, of allowing myself to feel safe, to express and just to be.
Mhm.
And it really kind of like, looking back on it, it very much aligns with the whole movement of like ecstatic dance these days, But so my experience was kind of like an early realization of that. And so the next morning, I'm at the bus stop and I realized I'm not afraid to dance. Like it just disappeared. And I started dancing in the bus stop. And that was huge, huge. So I experienced two things. I experienced kind of like an awakening to kind of an inner experience, through a visual experience that I didn't know was possible, and then a deep personal kind of psychological, emotional experience that I didn't know was possible, and that really, I think, solidified in me that I knew that there was more to my experience that I could pursue, that I could have intimacy with. And that I think that was a big part of establishing my path, because I've basically been on the same path since then, honestly, since I was like 15. And kind of really like, 15-year-old Michael could see me now and we would be a direct connection. I remember signing yearbooks in 7th grade, and I just spontaneously started signing them MDB Works. And I had this vision of like having an art studio or something like this, some kind of creative factory or something like that. And somehow it evolved and kept living, and here I am. So.
Oh my gosh, that's so such a lovely like story and experience that you had. And I think to be able to pinpoint that moment where just like everything sort of shifted is really meaningful. In social work, we have this idea of the multi-systems, like life course perspective, but one of the parts identifies like these turning points being a really important part of how we show up in the world and things that happen. And so the way that I'm hearing it, at least, it sounds like that was a really important turning point
Yeah,
in your
huge.
story. And then just to be signing those yearbooks with the MDV like arts thing, I think I can relate to that. I had like a statement I wrote somewhere on some sort of professional resume thing. And it was for a really specific purpose. And I didn't think it would matter anything beyond like when I wrote it at 18 years old. And it's like the guiding force of everything I do. Like every
Mhm.
decision I make comes back to that statement. And so I think that's so cool that you had that experience and that you shared it. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think if you look at a lot of people who have been able to fulfill some, calling, there is a moment when we're children or when we're young where it kind of comes to us. We're lucky to have that, Yeah.
Yeah, it's a goosebump sort of a thing. It makes me very grateful for certain. So at the same time, so you have this experience, you're going through your life and your father gave you this book, The Teachings of Don
Mhm.
Juan. Like this is all,
Yeah,
I just like to poke and prod where there's like little thick cliffhangers that make
sure.
me curious. So what's going on with that?
So that's another pivotal kind of aha movement, not necessarily in a moment, but a process. But yeah, so my father, obviously, my father and my mother pursuing their own work with themselves toward knowledge, self-knowledge, inner peace, yada yada. And yeah, my father, professionally he wasn't expressing his brilliance, but personally, he was, my father was driving taxis and trucks. He was hauling steel for Bushwick Steel, when I was a kid. But he was also reading like these Eastern mystic philosophers like Gurdjieff, and it was just, I don't know, he has in him an awareness, but not the courage, potentially because of his upbringing didn't really allow him to have that courage. But he has an awareness of more, and he wanted to pass that on to me. He could see in me that, and I think he wanted to share. So he'd probably be better at explaining this than me. But yeah, so he gave me this book, Don Juan, A Yaqui Way of Knowledge, which was and is. It's very widely published series. It was written in the 70s. Someone was studying, I believe it was San Diego State, and they were studying anthropology in Sonora, Mexico, the practices of peyote and ritual medicine in native Mexican culture in Mexico. And basically I started reading this book, and it was that like just, it was like hyper fuel for my quest, for my, I through kernels of knowledge in there, and through the sustained, by reading the series, by being there with this experience, be it fictionalized or real or what have you, it was it gave me a real structure with which to advance in my own kind of movement into altered states, other ways of perception, other realities. And I really took a journey through that, and it was I don't know, I'm at a loss for words, which is like, because it kind of transcends, really, it transcends words. It was just like, it's like, walking into the television, it's like you're seeing, it's like crossing over to that next dimension where all of a sudden the dream, it's like lucid dreaming. It's like the dream it's like, okay, you literally know that there's more going on in this experience. So it was, there's no way to overstate how effective that was for me.
Oh my gosh, I'm sure. And at the same time, I can imagine that, I mean, even now, like, it's hard to put into words because of how deeply meaningful it was, I imagine. But also, different audiences, I'm sure, can relate in differently, or less or more, or be intimidated by the conversation. What was that like for you as a young adult, right? Coming into the world with this different understanding, this really deep connection with what's going on around you. Like, I saw different parts of your story that were maybe harder and easier and fun and difficult. And I don't know if it's making sense.
Yeah, I think at first it wasn't necessarily an experience that I was capable of sharing with the world outside of me. It was a process that I was carried through. It wasn't that it was I chose to buy the ticket and get on the ride, but once I was on the ride, I didn't have a lot of control over it. That kind of came later. So I think there was a lot of maybe confusion in the beginning, in a way too. It's kind of a mix of clarity and confusion. Interesting question, right? Yeah, at a certain point, not that long after, really, but at a certain point, well, we kind of moved away from the city and civilization. We lived on top of a mountain in upstate New York for about a year and a half, and that really, I no longer had anything requiring, I had no pressure, so my expansion was like, I could just kind of just go wherever. And feel like I'm losing track of your question a little bit, but
it's great.
What happened was that I became so immersed and so dedicated to what I saw as a need for me to be and do in the world, that was dedicated to some other thing that was not apparent or present, ready-made present in the world, that it caused pretty big schism between me and authority, and also my family, and just basically everything, right? Because I was like, there's no place for me here. I have a place that is here and also really somewhere else, and I had to fully dedicate myself to that. So because there was that schism, yeah, there was hardship, and there was there was hardship. So even at the time, though, I think the hardship, it wasn't, I didn't feel like I was being, I didn't feel like poor me, or I was being persecuted, or I was failing, because I think I was always getting like these little drips, kind of like, from an IV. I was getting little drips of feeling like I was, drips of understanding, or drips of, I was never completely devoid of feeling like I was doing the right thing. So that, I think that really helped me tremendously.
Yeah, I think so often I can relate to that feeling of like people looking I always use this phrase, like people looking at us like we have 1,000 heads. Like I just feel like sometimes we say things and they don't stick with the person that hears them. But if you have that one person who like has a droplet, like you're mentioning, of like, that's so cool, I understand, or that's wonderful that you're like moving forth with what you're trying to learn, that can make a big difference. And you mentioned your example of your dad, diving into this literature that was really philosophical and life changing, and him being able to pass it down to you, even though his line of work was so different. I think that's a really cool support for education outside of the confines of like the traditional. And I'm curious about how you balance like that really great example with also, I guess, state requirements to finish school, and then societal maybe pressures to have degrees to achieve different things. Like, what does that part of your story look like?
I absolutely adore learning and investigation and discussion, and institutions of academia I enjoy very much. I could easily just, be, live in a university town and go to a university every day and read things with people and talk about things with people and think about things with people, and then come back the next day and talk about what I had thought about last night before I came.
Yeah.
I could do that. That would be extremely satisfying for me. Yeah, I again, my family was not, they had expectations in a way of excellence, but the excellence was that you be all you can be for you. And they were pretty hands off. They would worry, they still do, about that, about your welfare, but not that your choices are somehow devoid of purpose or value. And I didn't have the pressure to like, oh, you have to, school, job, career. I didn't have that pressure. Family, none. I didn't have any of those pressures. So but in high school though, if we go back to that point, I was done. I couldn't function really in the high school environment. So, and anyway, I ended up getting my GED in 10th grade, or after 10th and 11th grade. And I did go on to get a bachelor's degree and a master's degree much later. But mostly because I enjoy learning. I enjoy the environment and stuff, so yeah, in terms of, career, doing what is part of the normal structure or path, certainly tons of worry for myself and my welfare and my future, because maybe I wasn't doing those things. But also, there's plenty of examples of people who do those things and it doesn't work out, so there's really no guarantee. There's, and I'm still figuring that out, really. Like, how is, the manifestation of one's fullness, how does that occur? And I don't think that there's not like some written law for that. There's really, it kind of is, it exists, and how, the feeling that you have every day, and the choices that you make every day, and the way that you respond to others, and to your relationships. And there's no, of course, focus, work, dedication, things like that too, of course. They're major as well.
Yeah, I think everything you're saying is aligning really well and helping me understand more about your style and approach to your work and your goals for other people, of this, like, just being open to whatever next step or multiple steps are the right ones for you personally, whether that be the degree or be something different, because nothing's a guarantee, it seems like, of whatever thing you think is the perfect life, or the closest to perfect one that you can get. um so I think that's a cool point, maybe to segue to like your style and your approach to your work. You talk about sociological intervention art and a commitment to divergent acts in hopes of attaining uncommon insight, and I love words, and so I love those words, but I want to hear more about them from you.
uh can you give me one specific one to
Yes,
go off?
let's start with sociological intervention art.
Sure. And because I didn't go to art school or whatever, I may be massaging the meaning of those words a little bit to fit into my own perspective. But um, to bring into the public sphere, opportunities for, uh, you're basically intervening into the public space, right? You're not asking for permission, in a sense, from people who basically, might be commuting to work every day, back and forth in front of this piece of art. So it's a bit of a force, in a sense. It's there's a bit of bravado in doing that, and you hope that it's received well, and appreciated. But the point is to interject opportunities for, not to reuse the word, but divergent notions into a person who wouldn't otherwise have an opportunity um, to to experience that, or to think that. It's in my opinion, for me, what I look at what I'm doing is, it satisfies my own need in my own, in my own personal life, but it is also a service that I'm attempting to provide for community and for individual. But to kind of radically alter moments that people have in their daily routine and their daily life, so that they are not alone in challenging things for themselves, because that's really, really hard to do. So if we can, if we can provide moments of kind of acute difference, then we might be able to open up, crack and open up opportunities for people to start that path, to start that questioning. And then hopefully it all leads to kind of love and kind of mutual understanding. And it's the hardness of routine, the hardness of knowing, can be part of the walls that separate us. It's the spontaneous, it's the opportunity for risk or for vulnerability that will probably be more responsible for bringing us together. So it's all wrapped up in that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that that hardness of routine is so accurate. I remember commuting in New York City to my like job after college and going through the big like subway station all the time and just feeling like you have to stick your line, like chart your course. Like there's so much chaos going on around you. And if you stop to maybe like pick out the whole thing, it just becomes so overwhelming that you turn around and go home. Like you have to go to work because you got to keep moving forward. But if there's that moment of disruption that lets you be like, oh, wait, we're not a cog. Like we are humans with hearts and minds and ideas, and we can take a breath and we can do a different zigzag than the one we used like currently do through this crazy terminal. Like that's a really special and powerful moment. So I appreciate you kind of setting out with that goal. That's awesome.
Thank you. Yeah.
When did you start identifying as an artist who was interested in sociological intervention art, who was interested in these divergent acts? Like, was this always how you showed up to the scene, or when did you put that kind of name to it?
Um, it isn't always how I showed up to the scene. I think probably the first time it started making sense to me, probably about 12, 15 years ago, something like that. I was living up in Berkeley, and I did some art design for the African American Tobacco Prevention Fund. And that was, I think, my first opportunity to do something that was a bit subversive and poignant in speaking to a specific, kind of human experience that we wanted to, shake up. But I think it was in 2016 when I started doing installations at a music festival in Joshua Tree, and I started really thinking about this as a practice, as a real practice, and how that could satisfy a need in me, and to be able to satisfy that need in bigger and bigger ways that just made me smile bigger and bigger, that gave me further satisfaction. So that was, I think that was really when I started to really own that, not feel like shy about owning it, or insecure about owning it, but actually owning that and feeling like, hey, I'm taking on this responsibility and this is what I'm going to do.
Wow.
So yeah, 2016.
So a few years in the making. That's a beautiful kind of background. And I'm curious, I think people will find it fun maybe to know a little bit about the logic behind MIDABI as your like way that you show up in the arts world. It's a little different than that name you signed in high school, but a little bit.
Yeah, so it kind of is an extension of that, right? Because it was MDB Works, and it kind of grew. And I always, I mean, part of it is just that my name is a bit of a mouthful. People always misspell their last names. My father would, you'd be on the phone with customer service and you'd have to say it 10 times. My father came to me when I was a kid. He's like, if you want to change your last name, it's okay with me.
Wow.
But it was also just kind of like a way for me to, I think, to kind of, to kind of, your name comes with a lot of history. And there's so much identity packed into that. And, there are wounds there too. And that can be beautiful, but there's also parts maybe that are kind of part of a different life, or they're part of a different, because a lot of that identity in your name is how you are seen, not necessarily how you see yourself. So I think I still wanted something that was, just, easy, and that was that was encapsulated this part of myself. I didn't need all the other parts of Michael, who I am naturally, that's how I introduced myself, as my friends call me, right? So, but I needed something that really encapsulated not just the life of me, of Michael, but of the whole of the work, of that. So, and my mother liked it. It's a 22 in numerology. It adds up to 22 in numerology, which is a power number. So
Wow.
that if my mother likes it, then I usually I'm like, all right, cool. So M.I. Michael, D.A. Daniel, B.I. Bernberg. So it's pretty simple, yeah. But I just liked it. I liked it, and it's a challenge too, a little bit, because it's like, oh, am I like this cool guy with this cool name or something like that? But so it's a challenge for me to kind of get over my own insecurities of kind of being seen and asking to be seen in a way that I want to be seen, which, is if I don't get past those insecurities, then just I let everyone else define me and I just kind of go with that and react to that rather than, giving them, offering them something to have with which to define me in addition to how they see me. So I think I need to do more of that, actually.
Yeah, names are so powerful and so important. I think in senior year of high school, we read The Namesake, and I probably didn't actually read it because I wasn't really good at keeping up with the assignments. But the big takeaways were about, I think, the role of your name and the history that comes with it, and the I guess like the decision making that you have around it and how you use it and what you let people call you. And it's such an important part of why in this space I always put my middle name, because as a kid I was embarrassed. It was so ethnic. It was Elvira. I was like, but it's my grandmother's name and I love her. And she brought us to this country. And like, it's just so cool what a name can do and what choosing to embrace a name or change a name and all of that can
For
achieve.
sure.
So that's wonderful. And I appreciate you kind of going down that rabbit hole with me. So in your work, you use a lot of text. The scale is really important, like bold designs. How does that fit into this like disruption goal, or, why is this your medium?
Um, well, text for me is, it's, I like to write as well. So there's the beauty of poetry and the lyrical quality of words. And they are very powerful in sharing information and kind of really agitating the mind. Bold, big things. So shape, like my piece in Union Square, I could have much more easily done it if I had taken different plates of steel and had them welded together. But there's something about the weight and the presence of material that I think is actually very impactful, that really it communicates. It might not be obvious, but there's something material, there's something physical about that communicates, that moves. And so I mean, that I think there's just it also kind of, when you go to scale, it is a kind of a means of actually anthropomorphizing or giving life to the piece beyond me, beyond anyone else. It becomes so big or so present that no one person can really wrap their ownership around it. It has its own, it exceeds our ability to control it. And I think there's this very basic, very primal part of us that reacts to that, and I think that's a great way of overcoming resistance. It's a bit, you could say it's a bit paternalistic, it's a bit oppressive to utilize that, but it is effective, and I enjoy it myself. I enjoy that feeling, like, it's pleasant for me. So
Yeah, I had a similar experience when I stumbled upon your work in Union Square. It was really pleasant and lovely and powerful. So these works, I know like the Union Square one, and we'll look at it in a second. You said that one's coming down soon, right? Like that's not there forever. We won't get to always see it. Does that time limited nature add to your goals? Do you hope that it's different in the future? What is that like?
whew, it adds to my yeah. If I could leave it there, it'd be great. So I mean, most of the artwork you see in New York, public artwork, is temporary. I got a year, which was the max, which was very generous of them, wonderful and appreciative. It comes out in the end of June. I don't know they don't want to hear me saying this. I'm glad, but I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with it yet. It's either going to go into storage and then maybe come back to New York next year, or go to a different city or what have you. I may bring it to Burning Man this year. We'll see. It's doing public art is not for the faint of heart, man. It's, and I do this all myself. I do everything myself. Especially dealing with these large pieces, it's there's a lot that goes into it. I kind of reveled in the difficulty, getting a little, I'm ready for it to be a little easier, but it's still, I think there's something about pushing these limits and into difficulty and where I don't know exactly how I'm gonna pull something off, that feels, it kind of activates my rebellious side, or my like my my mischievous side a little bit, or something like that. So
Yeah.
yeah. Does
That
that
makes
answer your question?
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And you talked about, this not being for the faint of heart. And when we were getting to know each other, you talked a little bit about, the like the opposite of empowerment that happens, right? Or the humiliation that happens, the being robbed of different parts of yourself. Like, can you talk about maybe those parts of the hardship of showing up to do the work?
Yeah. Well, I think I think many artists choose, when you make this choice of your life's work in the arts, there's, obviously you have to, most of us have to leap over all of these pitfalls of shame and guilt and doubt and worry, that you know that we might end up homeless, we might not be recognized and appreciated, we might there's I've yeah it I've had to endure, and I'm not saying anyone put this on me. I probably had it a lot easier than others because of the family that I'm in and this and that. But I've had to experience a tremendous amount of shame about, not necessarily producing in the world in the way that was expected of me by, general society. Um, about, maybe relying on others for, for assistance, like, getting this piece in Union Square funded by somebody. It took me a year and a half, and I had to, it's like I've always been on the lowest rung of the totem pole of the level of importance. It's because I'm always asking, or I'm always needing from people who don't need me. They don't need me. They don't need my art. It's like, you're asking to be recognized, you're asking to be supported, emotionally, physically, financially, there's like and there's, a lot. And then at the end of the day, you may do all of these things and then still end up with nothing, because there's no system of, it's like very much a risk. And I've what happened was I kind of endured, say, 3 to 4 years of like, considerable worry, like pretty regularly, waking up in the morning and being, kind of terrified of, what's going to happen, right?
Mm.
And but I saw a trend. I saw kind of an upward trend of, I saw it was, of continuing to be appreciated, my work continuing to be appreciated, and opportunities coming, and just you can feel it kind of coming together more and more. So that gave me the confidence to keep going. If I hadn't experienced any of that, I'd still create, but I don't think I would. I don't know that I would be doing what I'm doing now. So I'm very grateful for the support that I have experienced and the appreciation that I have experienced, because it, enabled me to continue to carry on. It's like, these stories of like, the sailor, in the storms, kind of going out to find new land or this unknown place, and they're out in the storm, and they're getting washed around, and they might capsize and drown, but then like this, butterfly or dove, like out of nowhere, happens to come by and land on their shoulder or something, and they're like,
Oh,
a sign, right?
yeah.
So I saw signs, and it enabled me to carry on.
Yeah. And I think too, it just makes me think of that moment you had so many years before when you were no longer afraid to dance. Like, we have these
Mm.
little moments that help us know who we are. And like, it seems like maybe for you, part of who you are is this like willingness to step out on a limb and recognize that, like, when you do dance, it's beautiful and it is scary and it takes skill and showing up for it. But it enables all these great things. And so I'm going to go to this bigger and bigger, scary dancing arena because I'm not afraid to dance. I just think that's really, really special.
Thank you for sharing that connection with me. I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit just now, like you have to sit in the discomfort of this for a long time. It's not like ripping a Band-Aid where it hurts for a second and then your work's in the world and everyone loves it. Like that was a year and a half of trying to get funding, of trying to implement the Union Square project. Can you talk about a little bit of like, why you fight for it to be public work specifically, right? This is not something you wanted to put in the lawn of a gallery, or I don't know, just some of those logistics and why they matter to you or why they're worth it.
Sure. I think part of it is just I've always had this idea of audience, of sharing on a grand scale, of moving great amounts of people into something, and it's probably I've also done some theater and some performance, and I think I do enjoy a stage. I enjoy commanding attention and carrying and leading through an experience. But it's like, it's really that opportunity to present, opportunity for someone who's not in the backyard of a gallery. It's something, I love having my circle of people and my specific audience that I can sit around and have conversations with and share with. And I felt, I always feel understood and heard, but I'm not interested in being in an echo chamber, in a silo of experience, and the whole, there's just something so striking about witnessing someone realizing something new and having that shift. And I get to see that, like if I'm, with a piece of art somewhere, and I might interact with people who are there and have those moments, and knowing that those moments, potentially are happening every day for people, as what am I going to do? This is my work. This is the work that I'm doing. This is my service that I'm providing. I could be doing, there's, a lot of, we all, doing our work, and this is what I'm capable of doing. This is something that what it does for others also does for me. So it's like, it's an experience of community. It's communing with others in this place. It's like, let's all go to church and learn something new, so.
Yeah. Oh, that's a cool analogy. I had not thought of it that way, but I love that. And so without further ado, I'll pull up some of your works and we can talk about the stories behind them. So I'm actually starting here. So this one felt a little bit more maybe like theatrical, or there was, what is this about? When did this take place?
So this was in March of 2019, on the shores of the Salton Sea in California, Southern California in the desert. Salton Sea is a lake, an accidentally made lake. And this is a town on that shore, which, so there's a lot of kind of derelict houses there, and a group of people created an art community that also has an annual event there. And these derelict houses used to be occupied and used to be a vibrant town. And so I was kind of attempting to visualize, to draw out the energies in the place that remained after the people left. So I call this hidden energies. And I developed a relationship with a fabrication shop that worked with industrial grade, like architectural grade polystyrene or styrofoam. So I used their waste, and I painted it with fluorescent paint, and I used black lights, and I had some sound element in there, and I was, kind of transforming it into kind of it's like if you were to be able to put on goggles and see a different spectrum, of light or something like that, what you would find all of this life that was there, energetically, and and it's playful, it's a way to play. So
So fun and so cool. And so I'm curious, it sounds like part of the goal, or like the most abstract form of the goal, was maybe for people to remember that there was life there, right? That there was this energy. Was there any more specific, like, did you feel like there was good energy or bad energy, or like, does this place have a specific history that you're calling to? What do you want people to feel when they're experiencing the lights?
Yeah, interesting question. I definitely did set a mood. I think there was a general kind of vibe and energy you would feel in the space. The sound added to it as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, the place itself, overrides anyone's influence. It has an energy. I never felt any bad. It wasn't that I wanted to show bad energy. It was more about nature, about natural energy. I wouldn't say, that there was elements of, darkness or lightness, negative or positive in the energy. It was really more about just like, earthen energy, that is, kind of the basic structure of our experience. So there's no intention necessarily. It's just that natural movement of energy. But I did spend, I was rushing to get this done, and I did spend about 24 hours on this, or a little longer. But I was basically there overnight by myself working on this, and I absolutely felt like there were
Oh my gosh.
things in the corners, or like there was stuff going on, and I was like, I had moments where my breath was kind of like taken out of me, and it was incredible. I can experience, kind of fear, and also kind of get into it a little bit. So it was cool.
Oh my
It was
gosh,
very
I'm
cool.
sure. I think anytime you're somewhere late at night by yourself, for me at least, I'm like, this is funky. This is gonna be funky. But
Oh, I like that funkiness. I like it.
yeah,
I'm up for it.
embracing the funk. Very cool. Okay, so this one, I want to know about the design around them, but I also think it's a cool point to ask about your logo and how you conceived that in itself.
Yeah, this was a while back when I designed this green man, and he kind of became my friend and then my logo. It was originally, I started this with the idea of, I had a name for it, like, a little Instagram and whatever. It's called Note to Selfie. Whether you like that or not, basically the concept behind it was that, as we look out into the world, we capture, right?
Right.
We capture what we see, and what we see, that process of capturing becomes a part of us, right? So the camera becomes incorporated into you. You are this process of capturing, and it becomes you. And then it kind of grew into something else that I was seeing with, the expansion of social media, the expansion of people being connected, and in social media, and, for better or worse, kind of our habitual use of it, activates us thinking about other people at a distance regularly. And I think this is extremely new in human history. This is not something that human beings have done. But we are practicing every day, feeling, seeing, thinking a connection with other people in a kind of in a bit of a personal or personalized way that I don't think has ever occurred. You might have had a distant romance, and you would write letters to them, and you'd be thinking, but this is like it's become like a practice every day. Tut, 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 think, tut, tut, what, and I think this is actually activating a a psychic muscle, a psychic capacity in us. And I think we're actually developing a ranged awareness that is probably dormant, or would only appear in individuals spontaneously. But I think we're kind of developing an awareness at distance, essentially. And so these cameras for eyes, it kind of just played into that for me, and is kind of expanded into this awareness that through this lens of this digital lens, or this remote lens, we're starting to gain some kind of extrasensory awareness that generally we did not have before.
Yeah. Oh, that's so cool. Did that awareness, or at least the idea for this face with the two cameras, did that come instantly and you drew it and then it was done and that's always been there since then, or what?
Yeah, my work happens pretty quickly. I'll, even with the text, even with words and things, I'll go back and, change something here and there a little bit. Yeah, but it's usually I will kind of just sit and roll through the internet, maybe looking for kind of inspiration or examples or things to put together. And I'll look at my old work. I just kind of take inspiration from, design wise, from different places. And things just kind of happen spontaneously for me. I don't usually go into it with a concept. It's kind of like the concept, it's almost like the design happens first, and then the concept kind of pops out of what's occurring in the moment, in the process, really the process of creating something in which I discover the meaning. It's not usually where I have that idea beforehand.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a pretty personal experience. Like, I don't know if you could teach that to someone else. Is that right? Or am I getting it wrong?
Well, I haven't tried. I haven't tried teaching this. So I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people would say, yeah, you can't teach these kind of things. That may be true. And there are a lot of things. You couldn't probably not teach me to do, accounting, to do tax. I probably could, I wish I had more of discipline in math, because I absolutely adore physics and theory. And I think math plays a huge role in some of the questions that I seek to answer. So I wish I could do that myself, but I don't. So but yeah, I don't know. That's not a question that I could answer. Yeah.
That's fine. I think what's really cool here nonetheless is that there's this design element of just communicating so much with so little. Like, it's such a faith, like it's one dimensional. There's like a few lines and a few, like two colors, and you're able to give this really cool background of all the different ideas that inform this thing that is accessible and really impactful. So I love that. And then what is going on around the logo here with I'll leave it at that.
Sure. So the one with the sphere has to do with place, the effect of space and place, and how we are inside an infinite space that is always inside, is kind of this concept of the infinite interior, and how our positioning can affect our perceptions of reality. How if something is close, near to you, or far from you, or in a place that feels comfortable or uncomfortable, these placements of objects in space in relation to you and where you are can radically define your perception of reality, perception of yourself, of other, of community, whatever. And it is such an arbitrary actual kind of way of defining or understanding our reality, because it's quite random, in many ways, how we're positioned, the time period you're born in, the place you're born in, the body you're born into, the people that you are born with relationships to. These are all essentially, as far as I can tell, a random occurrence. And they have enormous implications for how we see ourselves, others, and reality. And so this very simple, seemingly understood, seemingly benign, normal aspect of space, of distance, of, relationship to things near and far is one of the most impactful things for our entire society and our entire world. And I think, the value in seeing that is to then see how that might be affecting you, and perhaps then being informed enough to make choice with greater agency, and to not be influenced by this random placement in how you see the world, and hopefully giving us all a greater opportunity for that peace, love, and understanding that we want to be able to make our world in the image of her with.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. That's so cool. And I totally see it. And then the one next to it, what is that one?
To me, it's much more simple for me. It was really just kind of a visual expression of awareness. It's that, it's basically kind of like that crown chakra of awareness, and that headlight, that illumination that you are then kind of surrounded by. It's like, it's facing the world out, but it's also illuminating the body, it's illuminating the self too.
Yeah,
kind of like
that
that.
duality. So cool.
Yeah.
Love that. Awesome. Okay. These are some words and colors and shapes, and I chose these because I liked these words together, and I wanted to learn more about how you chose them.
Sure. So this design scheme really started out with infinite interior, right? So the idea that within a box, be it a room or a concept or any kind of defined space, this is our idea of an interior. And then we oftentimes project, kind of relates back to the only other thing is nothing. We oftentimes project to some other place that is kind of part of the infinite, or the more that is outside the interior that we're in, whether we're choosing to be within this interior or we feel trapped within this interior. There's this other place of freedom and liberation, because it's outside the interior. And also it's all an interior. We are in an infinite interior. The box that we are identifying as an interior is not defined. It is a part of the great infinite interior. It's not separate. It's not actually four walls. It is quite open, and it's just kind of like a psychological trick in us that we feel confined. It's a choice to be confined. You can find that interior experience. Some, in many ways, an interior can be comforting because we know it, we feel familiar with it, we understand it. But your interior exists in the infinite, and you are a child of that place. Your home is that place. Give yourself a chance to experience that as your home, and you will discover that wherever you are in the world, whatever you're doing, you will have a place. You feel, you are at place in your existence. By existing, you are at home. And so there's, the infinite interior. And, it comes back again to my childhood and being raised to look within. What you're looking for is within inside of you, to experience that infinity within too. It has a little bit of that grace to it as well for me.
Yeah, I love what that can enable for people. If you believe that, like, in any circumstance, there's a role for you, or there's a place for, like, that's just so, um, that creates so much more opportunity than if you feel like your home is one specific site, one community, one role. It's awesome.
Yeah, this is one of, I think, the big will be the big turning points for society, for humanity, is to realize this difference between, fiction and nature. Our great and wonderful gift and capacity for imagination and for creativity, creating these things, and then just and then the natural, what we are as just beings of awareness, and energy. And I know that sounds frou-frou, but that's literally what we are. you know so that will be a major turning point. Yeah. And that's a one we have, that's a drum we have to continue to beat.
Absolutely. And then I think that kind of segues us to the other side of this, the being versus the doing of the, like, what was going on with this one.
Yeah, so in this set, they kind of reference back to that. They're kind of like little ways of referencing the interior, infinite interior relationship. But just another way of, like, we to do in the world references a structure, references. So it's like, I understand these four walls, these boundaries, these relationships, and I'm doing within that space, right? Based on these rules, based on these roles. And then, and it's a little bit cheeky in a way, because I'm not trying to demonize doing. Doing is extremely important, right? But also to understand that, being is a form of doing, right?
Yeah.
It is the essential component of doing. And you don't have to understand. There doesn't have to be a kind of, I'm trying to use gentle language, but there doesn't have to be a commodified relationship between actions. Being is the act of all things. Doing is the act of a specific idea, a specific relationship. Being is the doing of all things. It's like the natural, the original doing is just to be.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like that kind of balance.
Yeah, I love that. So this work, these two, and the ones before it of the logo, do they exist exclusively in the digital world? Do they show up in real life somewhere? What is that?
Not yet. I've done some. I was pitching a project. I was last year with possibly on Governor's Island in New York, but they could show up as a sculpture, prints. They probably will initially end up as NFTs, because they're just digital. They're digital works right now, and I really, I really enjoy working in the digital space. It's like I can sit down for hours and hours and just, go through a lot and, get into that zone. It's like, so yeah, currently they just exist as digital, but yeah, there'll probably be availability as prints in the near future. And there'll be prints that are certified on the blockchain. I'm trying to bring in that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, but for now they're digital.
Yeah, those are great things to be looking forward to, for the world to be looking forward to. And that digital stuff, the blockchain, the NFTs is like, there's a learning curve, but I'm feeling more motivated now to figure it out. That I know some folks who are involved is really cool.
something fun about it is that there's kind of a learning curve for absolutely everyone involved. It's like everyone's kind of learning about it together. Like no one is actually an absolute authority on what's going on with this. So it's kind of fun actually.
I like that. I like being on, okay, we're on the cusp of a new thing as a community, not just an odd one out. That's helpful.
Sure. Yeah,
Comforting.
exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. These are I guess similarly digital, right? Is that
Yes.
okay?
Yes.
So I can't wait to hear more.
I haven't thought about these in a while actually. Um, it's funny, the wolf that speaks need not teeth is one of my favorite ones personally that I've ever done. It's like, but it's usually everyone's least favorite one, which is it's kind of cute. Um, to me, it's like a way of talking about the power of communication. The power of communication, and maybe in my world, the power of words. With the wolf, obviously, usually a wolf is the subject of some danger, power. You know, the wolf is a predator, right? So the wolf can use speech. The wolf that communicates doesn't need their teeth in order to bite, in order to feed, in order to be that powerful animal. You know, it's like, if you were to take a dog and that dog starts to speak, it changes the whole dynamic, right?
Yeah.
So the wolf that speaks doesn't need its teeth anymore to bite. It doesn't need its teeth anymore to hunt. It can, it's taken on a whole new dynamic, essentially. Sometimes applying these to the TVs, it also can take on a different tenor too, about mass communication, television, and about, maybe some of the tools being used or the intentions behind, uh, mass communication, advertising, pop culture a little bit. It's like, things can be used to, to manipulate, or, objectives attained, or even, it can be manipulation in a positive way too. But, the television being a form of communication where this beast does not require direct contact with you, direct intervention in order to hunt you. It does that through speaking, through its tool of communication. It's very powerful. So
Yeah. Oh, this is becoming one of my favorites too. I think it's a fascinating like phrase, and you can go in so many different directions with it. You have that kind of macro lens of the commercialization and the media and stuff. But I'm thinking too on the micro lens of like even maybe taking the stigma away from the wolf. Like, I don't know, it's bringing up for me like a teenager who just acts out a lot, right? Because they don't have the words for the pain they're
Mhm.
feeling, or the way to communicate their lived experience and what it does for them to get that chance to have a voice. Like
I love that.
I think that's so cool and
I
exciting.
love that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's beautiful.
thank you. And so, okay, the blue one, life is a conversation between surprise and forgetting. So cool.
Yeah, there's a beautiful frailty to human beings. There was a phrase or a term that I learned a long time ago, human folly. It was in the Don Juan book, where they appreciated quite a bit human folly, the folly of man, or the folly of humans. And um, we are these, kind of fragile, vulnerable, beings, and our lives kind of live between these two states in a way, of surprise and forget, you know, of that buoyant, brightly lit moment of new experience, and then that process of habituation, and where we still have the same breath, and we still, walk on the same feet. The things now over time, have become a part of us, have gotten worn, have let go, or maybe, maybe our where we're putting our energy changes, and what was once this surprise is now carries little weight, and is let go of. There's just such a there's the importance we put on things, the dramatization, the weight, the heaviness, and how it's all so transient and transitory, and we move between these feelings of ecstasy and ecstasy and activation, and then kind of peace and rest. And our relationship with experience, our relationship with ourselves, like I think habituation is just such a major component too. It's kind of like the space thing about this arbitrary, random, it's like we could get used to anything. People talk about aliens and they're like, oh my God, aliens, and well, yeah, but if aliens were present, right? Yeah, it's going to be a pretty big deal. But guess what? In 10 years, after they've been around for 10 years and, we're used to what they do and yada, yada, it's just going to be normal again. That's, everything that we're experiencing is aliens. It's everything that we're experiencing is like, insane.
Yeah.
Right. But we get used to it. And, that's also part of the slippery slope of losing touch with reality. In a sense, is when we slip into these states of normalization of kind of the magic, and we lose touch with the majesty of our experience, and we then start searching for other things that feel like majesty again, like feel like surprise, and we diminish that which absolutely was once in our lives the most incredible thing to occur or to exist. So it's very important to, I think, be aware of that inclination we have in our process to forget.
Yeah. Oh, I think it does come up all the time, and it's such an important cycle to be mindful of. I think, this week I graduated, right? And I was talking with my parents, it's like, it doesn't feel like anything. Like, I don't feel like I did anything. Like, I have 2 years but it was the hardest 2 years like ever. Like, and they're like, no, like, remember that thing and this thing. And, this is all new and this is all scary. And now it's all like blase, but
Mhm.
this is a
Mhm.
lot of work, and it's a commemorative thing. And you get to the end, and it's kind of, my dad used the term like dysphoric. Like, it's just kind of like, we're
Yeah,
going
that's
to
a good
be
word.
you right now. And so this really resonates, especially in this moment.
Yeah.
I'm appreciative of it. So the big showcase here, the reason that I found your work, we have that piece in Union Square, and then some other ones that I don't know anything about, and would love to learn more.
Uh, in terms of their meaning, you're saying?
Yeah, and just
Yeah.
how they came to be, where are they, what's going on?
Yeah. The one in Union Square was, we talked about that a little bit, was a 3-year process. I can't even go into the whole story of the history of this, because it would be a while. There was a lot of insane, out of left field things that almost killed the project. And but I made it. Yeah, I made it through, and placed it in, by all, in one of the most incredible locations I could ever hope for, really. So it was an incredible story for me personally, and a success for me. So the only other thing is nothing. I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, because for me there's really a lot of complexity and nuance to its meaning, but I'm going to kind of like try and weave kind of some of the main theme. Kind of like some of the other pieces relate to, habituation can play into this, but we are, initially, like, so it was kind of like this commentary on this approach to revelation, approach to, and the kind of influence of religion, and even in like New Age spirituality, these ideas of kind of hierarchy and levels, like, oh, I'm meditating to get to the next level or the higher level, or I'm being a good person so I can then go to heaven. There's always this greater place, this other place that's better than the place that I'm at now, or at some other place. And that just literally does not, it doesn't, that whole idea only exists in our minds. It does not exist in nature. And when I say nature, I'm referring to all of creation. In nature, things exist on a horizontal plane. They don't exist on a vertical plane. There is not a hierarchy. There is relationship, and that relationship is equal amongst all parts. It's a body. It's a uniform body that moves. So all, I like to say, I like this, I don't, in a space infinite, all proportions are equal. There is no thing that exists that can be if it exists, it has place. Sorry, a little slow today. If it exists, it has place. If it exists, it has purpose. It has value. It exists. Therefore, it is absolute. It is and there is no other place. There is no other plane. There is this experience that you're having, and the more that you want to feel or know is within this experience and not somewhere else. The guiding rule of thumb, or the mission, but is to have a more intimate relationship with this experience, to know it more intimately, and in there, by doing, you will see more, feel more, know more, have surprise again, but it's not a removal from, it is a sinking into, it is a into, and that I think that's the part these days that is most relevant to me. There's other, like I said, there's a lot of other ways in which it goes that are from me, and then there are other ways that other people have been inspired to interpret it as well. But I think that's really kind of the most important thing to talk about right now.
Yeah, I think I don't know, the human tendency might more and more be to run away from a situation if it's uncomfortable or frustrating or whatever. But I think this is reminding me the way you're describing it, of like the sinking in of like, no, like hunker down, like figure out why you're uncomfortable or you're not liking it. Like grow in the appreciation part, just grow in knowing yourself. Like,
yeah, you're not going to escape. There is no other thing. The only other thing would be nothing. But so this is it. So there's like the longer sentence that this would be part of is, what is what is. The only other thing is nothing.
ugh, it's so cool. And it really does make us think, and I think appreciate, which I'm appreciative for. So in the aggregate, like with, these works that are in the public and are massive in scale, I'm just curious about, it sounds like the having the idea, choosing how it shows up is the art for you versus the making of it. Like, are you welding this into existence too, or are you working with partners on that?
Yeah, well, it depends on scale, but yeah, 9 times out of 10, I'm working with partners. When you're working at scale, yeah, there's a lot of, machinery and expertise, and I may be able to pick up a torch and weld something, but it's not going to be someone who's been welding for 15 years. And, as I'm saying, so, and I like to work with other craft. Yeah. The craft is not my purpose.
Right.
I feel very impacted by the quality of the work, and it becomes, the quality of the work feels personal to me, and it feels, but yeah, I like working with other people on the production of the work. And when it's at smaller scale, though, I do a lot of it myself, which is also a lot of fun. There's a lot of discovery too in that process physically. There's a lot of language that comes out through physical touch, and the seeking of material or shape in that moment. So it's also a great process. But my motivation is communicating information. So I'm going to get that done as efficiently and as, at a level of quality, that at the highest level of quality I can. And that requires working with other people, and which I'm more than happy to do.
Yeah. And my kind of final question about these works that are in the public, are they the result of a like request for proposal, or do you have this idea and you're like organically reaching out to downtowns and parks, and is it a little bit of both? What's that like?
Yeah. So yeah, I've never done a commission yet. I've always generated these projects myself. So I kind of identify, I identify something that I want to do, I identify an opportunity, um, and I just kind of reach out and I make it happen, or I don't make it happen, But it's all through. Uh, it sounds woohoo or foo foo or whatever they say, but it really is all through love. Like, basically it's about knowingness. It's about knowing that you can. It's knowing about you will. There's a knowingness beneath it all, just a knowingness, like, and then there's moving through the world, and through relationships with that love and that hope and that request, to be, and it's quite a balance, to be both, to present yourself as being, kind of strong and informed and capable, but also to present yourself in that honest fashion of, your vulnerability and your need and your want to be loved and appreciated and recognized, and I think that I've just had the fortune of encountering people who appreciated that, who saw that and appreciated that, and wanted to see me succeed, in a sense. I guess they want, and that doesn't happen every time, but it's happened often enough to give me opportunities to do these things.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for sharing it. So as we kind of abstract back out and start wrapping up, we've talked to, or you've spoken to, embedding philosophy and emotion into an observer, and
Mm.
germinating and radicalizing into an actionable change in life that, sparks this ethos of a community. Why does this all, matter in your mind? What keeps inspiring and motivating you?
Yeah, I think it, because in a way it doesn't matter, because time and space are absolutely enormous, and everything that can occur will occur, and we will move through the motions of what we will move through. But it matters to me because there is some, I just, it's, you know, I think from a young age I was made very aware of suffering, and I was very empathic, and my whole world in large part really was about feeling the suffering of others and responding to that. And so much of my motivation came from that awareness, that feeling that happened in that awareness, and the desire to be with others and to help uplift others. And that experience personally, and also I think just in a greater way, the feeling of being appreciated for involving myself in that act, essentially motivate me to believe that intentional directive change is possible, and that it is meaningful, and that it's substantial, and that it does have the potential to be stable and long lasting, and guiding of a long-term course. And it's like, what else do I need to do? I mean, I could go down to Mexico and live on the beach and play dominoes or something, but like, what the fuck, that's great and all, but that doesn't activate me. And it's also, that's just such a boring waste for me personally, that wouldn't do it. So I have to believe to some measure that meaningful, impactful, real change can and will occur, and that there's a much greater concrete effect that is going to be of great value to a great many other people, and that I can participate in that. And that's my motivation for that.
That's awesome. That's certainly motivating. Have you, encountered any really important lessons along the way, or pieces of wisdom that you're thinking of now that you'd like to share with others who are maybe trying to show up in similar ways, or, also affect positive change?
Yeah. I think for a lot of people attempting to affect change, there's a lot of frustration. I think there's a lot of activity going on that attempts to create change while utilizing the practices and the systems of that which we're trying to change from. And I think there's no possibility of true change. I think that the change will occur beyond the common structure of change that or the common structure of the tools necessary are not those that have been tried before in mass. They're going to have to be based in love and patience. And I think it's really important. I think a great way to look at it is, you see someone who you may think that they're coming from a place of ignorance or hate or fear. And I think it would be great to adjust our point of view, which may be very difficult to do, but where you see them and understand them in a way as if they were your child. How would you approach your child if you saw them thinking, doing in ways that you didn't agree with, or that you thought were unhealthy for them? Would you, are you going to approach this person with, a sword in your hand? Of course not. You're not,
Right.
And even if that works in the temporary, swords do not stay in hands, they move. And you may be holding that sword one day, but you won't be holding it another day. That's just the nature of it. It's got to be, the embrace. It has to be, other functions, other tools of communication, other tools of construction. The bludgeon is not an even precision, a precise weapon, although maybe more effective than a bludgeon, is still, it's still not the right way to go. It's going to have to be through love that we have lasting, stable change in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important message and reminder and motivator. And finally, as we wrap up, what do you want people to leave knowing about you in case we've missed the mark before now? And what are you looking forward to? That could be the next iced coffee of the day or something much bigger.
I'm looking forward to personally kind of coalescing something new. There's got to be some new for me. I feel like it's going to be a kind of grander map of ideas kind of mapping into their relationship with each other, and how there's like a larger construct, there's a larger map or plan happening. I have like these ideas that live here and here and here, but there's a connective tissue, and I'm kind of like, letting that body grow. And I really want to see that. I want to see that body. Yeah, about me, that we don't know. Just that, as we kind of do this all together, there's greater and greater support for what you're doing. There's greater support in your community. Be available, be vulnerable, listen and trust, listen, trust, question, but be present, be available, be vulnerable, and be prepared and ready to be with others in this journey. Don't keep yourself in isolation. And if you get hurt along the way, fine, but it's going to be worth it. And then the pain that you might feel if there's rejection or there's confusion, just stay pointed in the direction that your spirit or your heart is feeling, the one that it needs. Follow that need, and it'll lead you. It'll continue to lead you. So, and since we talked about my grandmother, I'm going to show you some of my grandmother's paintings.
Oh my gosh, what an honor.
She painted female nudes.
No way. Oh my gosh.
My aunt's apartment is filled with these paintings.
They're stunning. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So.
They're breathtaking. Oh, thank you so much for showing these.
I don't know if you can see this, yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. What a talent. That's so cool. Oh, thank you so much, MIDABI. This has been such a beautiful privilege and experience to get to spend the morning with you, learning more about your work and your story. And so I'm very grateful and very excited to share it with the world.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate it. You're beautiful.